Yeah, that makes sense. And I just wanted to understand that timeline. You know, the several callers were concerned with opportunity for the public to have awareness and to weigh in. So thank you. I will bring it out to council to see if we can start with anyone moving the recommendation that is presented, and then we can go to discussion.
Sorry, Mary, I wasn't going to move that recommendation. I had a different recommendation, and I did have some follow-up questions.
Okay, so go ahead. Councilmember Kalantari-Johnson.
Okay, I'm going to ask my follow-up questions if that's okay. First of all, thank you for the work that has been done, and as you said, Casey, the years of work that's gone into it. I just wanted to hear a little bit more about the timeline. I got a little lost when you said 180 days from the November election, but it seems like there is a little more urgency for us to select these maps now, not by July 7th. So if you could just touch on that.
Sure. And again, Doug and Cassie are probably, Doug in particular is probably more of an expert, is far more of an expert, but the drop dead deadline by which we have to get the maps to the county is the beginning of July. And I think Cassie clarified it's July 6th. But that's just the legal requirement. And there's an urgency to getting this resolved because folks do need to know where they're living and what the potential may be for them running for election in a district. And as Doug pointed out, once people start focusing on the ballot measure in June, the noise around that is gonna consume everything. So if we can get this done earlier rather than later, that would be more ideal.
Great. And then there was a survey that was completed on these maps. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Sure. We did the Whole Coast survey. It's a tool that we use, and it's been on the website for a number of months. And so a couple of months, actually, since we first posted the initial drafts that NDC provided to us in January. And we collected feedback on the first round of maps, and we received a lot of feedback there. When we first thought we were looking at a 7-district process, we received, I think, around 120 responses on that and around 56 responses on the 6-district maps, which came out later on in the process. We put out a survey with the maps this week, and we did not receive a ton of feedback, but we did share, I understand that Rose shared what we received with the council in the mailbox, in the council mail around the agenda items. And so we did promote those, the availability of those through our social media channels and things like that. But probably with the 7-day legal requirement, there probably just wasn't as much. We also did let some of the communities that we met with, I let them know about the new poll and the new maps and this public hearing to make sure that they had an opportunity to share that with their constituencies.
Okay, great. And you said, I put in my notes, over 24 community groups. Or
Yeah.
around?
Yes.
Okay.
And it's been over, primarily since January, once the maps were available, and reaching out to folks and making sure they're aware of the process and how it works, and asking for their feedback on how best to reach their community members who may not have access to virtual forums.
Okay, and then the last question, and then Mayor, I did have comments and a motion to make, but the last question is, were some of those community groups Latinx and or Beach Flats community groups that you worked with?
Absolutely. That was a huge part of my focus, reaching out to, that community.
Great. Okay, thank you. So I'll keep my comments brief. Thank you to everyone who has participated in all of these different various forums and avenues that staff and demographers have put before us, and then those who've called and written letters. I think one caller said this isn't about us 7 council members, and they're absolutely right. This is, whether we do districts or not, that we've sort of moved on from there. I know that people have very strong feelings about it, but here we are, and it's about how we shape our governance for the next decades to come. So it's not about me. It's not about my 6 colleagues. We'll term out. Maybe we'll run again. Who knows? But it's really about the next many decades. So I'm glad that caller said that. I think this is difficult. This is the first time that we're doing this as a community. All of the maps have trade-offs and impacts, and I don't think delaying any longer will get us any closer to making the perfect decision or choosing the perfect map, because I don't think a perfect map exists. And so just based on, the feedback from before, the surveys, looking at the data, looking at the stats, I would like to recommend that we move forward with map 602. I appreciate the work that the staff has done in integrating our feedback into 604 and 604B. But I still think that 602 has the most balanced approach to our community, keeps communities of interest such as Seabright intact. So I'd like to move forward with map 602.
Sorry.
You okay, Mayor?
All right, there's a motion from Councilmember Kalantari-Johnson to approve map 602 for the 6 district maps. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
And a second by Councilmember Myers.
And do I need to speak to the sequencing right now? Because the sequencing that's proposed on 602, I think makes sense. That goes along with the motion.
Can we, does it need to be 1 or 2 motions? Can someone speak to that?
It could be 2 separate motions or either way.
I'll make it part of the same motion then, that the sequencing that's proposed on draft 602 map be considered.
Can you pull up map 602 so we can see that? Thank you.
I'll second that addition, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. So now we can have discussion about, let's see, let me make this bigger. 602, we have the proposed, there is no alternative sequence. There's only one option on this map. Some of the maps have a couple of options. So it looks like this map has, can you speak to that, Doug?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. So in this case, there is a pairing. There are 2 current council members in District 3, but both of the council members are on the same election cycle. And so it's a similar effect if there was just one that district is proposed to be on their election cycle.
Okay.
And then the one vacant seat would then, the vacant seat would be the mayor. So in this map. So that's why there's only the one proposed.
So this motion is recommending map 602, that if the voters decide to go to a 6th district with a 1 at-large mayor, then this would be the map we would use. And in November of 2022, District 4 and District 6 would be available for someone to run, plus an at-large mayor. And then in 2024, District 1, 2, 3, and 5 would be available for someone to run. Okay, I just wanted to make sure that was clear. Okay, so Councilmember Myers?
Yeah, just as the seconder, I just want to thank the staff for their work and also thank Doug. And also just, acknowledge what I'm hearing, which is a lot of frustration from some of the speakers. And also some of the speakers, taking the time to let us know what their thoughts are. I think it is important for the public to understand that I don't think any sitting council member on this council, when they ran for office, had any idea that district elections would be coming our way. This is something that really is a result of a lawsuit. Several, if not dozens of cities, I believe, around California are in the same place that we are. And so this is, it's important, I think, for the public to understand and for our community to understand that this need to really look at better representation in our democracies, in our towns, is real, and that is, why we are where we are today. And I think it's, it's just important that, those listening or those who may look at this meeting later on or read about this activity, that I don't think anyone sitting here at least in an elected official capacity, looks at this as something that is strategic in trying to further their political gains or their goals. We are trying to respond to a legal action against the city. We're weighing the cost of trying to fight a lawsuit like the one that we have received, and know that other cities are spending millions of dollars in those fights and not really being very, actually to this point, not really having any success with regards to the transition to districts. I personally think this is going to be a very difficult transition. Santa Cruz is a very difficult little town, I think, to district. It has, we are an interwoven community in so many different ways. And Doug, I just want to, again, congratulate you for, the work that you did. And it's very clear that you've worked from the data. I did look at every map. I also spent hours with all the data on the back side of the maps, which is something that I don't think has received a lot of discussion so far. But for those folks who really want to understand really what's going on with our community, the statistics on the back of these maps is really quite informational and really interesting to look at. So I think we are where we are. I am supportive of this map. A couple of things. I think I really looked hard at 604B. The more I looked at it, the more I started to understand the reasoning behind it, and I can understand why maybe the staff really did think maybe this was a good one to look at. There's a couple of things that just really pop out for me though on 602, which is it really establishes communities, I believe, of common concern, plus also when I think about the things that make a community or make a neighborhood or make a district, I'm thinking about things like, the business districts. Are they large? Are they small? What kinds of services and facilities are in those? Our own services and facilities that we provide to the community. Do these districts have parks, for example? Is there safe routes to school? Is there, bike lanes? All the kinds of things you would be thinking about as a city council member when you're thinking about your district. What kinds of improvements, do you see collectively in that community of concern or community of interest? What kinds of opportunities would you want to bring into that district? Where are the schools located? Those kinds of things. Those, how safe is the transportation type of network in that particular community? Are there areas that need work? That was very helpful to me, try to think that way when I looked at these maps, so that, you stay true to the intent of really trying to create compact communities of interest. And I think 602 just kind of really rang the bells for me on that. And so that's why supporting the motion. I think this is as difficult as it is to divide up our little town. I would hope that these districts could serve well for folks who live in them, but also more importantly, for those folks who may consider running for office, provide, the geographical place that they can, that they can represent, that they see a role for themselves representing and participating in and bettering, whether it's the business side or, getting a new bike lane or whatever it is. In some ways, I'm a little bit envious, of having a place that's that is your sole focus. But at the same time, we will lose that ability to work across our city, to really solve big problems. And I hope, as we move into districts, we continue to attract really good candidates, because that's really what's going to be the success of this transition and the success of our democracy. Is that if this change makes people have this potentially to be a way to become more involved as a candidate, I just think that's a win. So it's a win for the community, and it's a win for the future of Santa Cruz if we can get more involvement in our local government, which is very difficult for just about everybody in this town at this point in time to do with their lives. So that's just a few comments on why I'm supporting 602. And thank you, Mayor, for the time.
Thank you. And just a quick time check. We have about another 15 minutes on this item. And I will, it looks like, go to Councilmember Cummings and then Councilmember Brown.
Thank you, Mayor. I had a couple comments that I wanted to make first. One, I just wanted to be clear for members of the public that while the discussion around district elections has been going on for quite some time, and there's been community meetings on district elections going back a couple of years now, that it wasn't until February of 2022 that we started looking at 6 districts, and there had not been as extensive outreach on this question of moving towards 6 districts and a directly elected mayor. The council actually voted unanimously to move forward with just district elections until a subcommittee was formed in November, at which point the subcommittee then brought back the notion of moving towards 6 districts and a direct elected mayor. And what I've been hearing from members of the public, and what is known to be true, is that there was not a lot of process around community outreach on that effort. So I just wanted to make sure that's clear for members of the public. And while, we might vary in terms of whether we support six districts or 7, what's before us tonight are the maps. And part of why we sent staff to bring us back these maps is because of the fact that there were concerns that were raised around the maps that were first produced, especially relating to people from low-income areas, people who are Latino, being kept in the same districts, and also having broad representation. Map 604, what the staff brought back, and while I'm not in favor of moving towards districts, I thought did a really good job of trying to address the concerns that were raised at the last city council meeting. When we look at the areas where there are higher concentrations of Latinos in our community, we know that those areas are the beach flats. We know that those areas are in the lower ocean area. And what 604 did was actually combine those areas, which was expressed by council as being something that we wanted to see come back. It also did a good job of keeping the lower west side intact. It has the 3rd district isn't the greatest, but I think that it does a good job of representing and keeping together kind of the upper west side. And what it also did was, and what we've heard as council members, concerns coming from students, is students really being able to have a voice on the city council and having an opportunity to get elected, which District 5 actually accomplishes by having the campus and also the other Asians as a group of interest being able to have a district where they're kept together. So, oh, and then it also, again, addressed issues around the east side and keeping the Shebreh area intact. And so I think that, based on the fact that we sent staff back with a lot of these concerns, and they addressed those concerns in bringing forward map 604B, I'm inclined, and also because of the mayor's rules around making staff recommendations and providing an opportunity to make a motion on the staff recommendation, I'm going to make a substitute motion that we adopt map 604B. And I did have a question on this as well, because the other piece of this is that we've had a lot of discussion about the maps, and we haven't had really any discussion, and there hasn't been much presentation on the election sequence. And so I have a question regarding the election sequence before I include that in the motion. On map 604B, it has two sequences, and I'm wondering if staff can just take a minute to explain how those sequences would work and how it relates to potential for overrepresentation if there's two council members in a district at the same time, and if another district doesn't have a representative, how do we kind of reconcile that?
Sure, happy to address sequencing questions. There are, for 604B, there are two scenarios, a proposed and an alternate. Because there are three council members paired in District 6 and two council members paired in District 1. And so that creates two vacant seats. So really the two versions are just trying to give you the options for how those could be assigned. A couple of tricks that come into this. One is if a council member whose term is up in 2022 gets assigned to a district that doesn't come up till 2024, that means this current year will be their last year in office before they have to sit out in 2 years before they can run. On the flip side, if a 2024 member is assigned to 2022, they can run midterm. And if they win the district seat, then they resign the last 2 years of their at-large seat. So that's how it plays out for the council members. For the vacant seats, yes, there is happens in many transitions district elections where there is a vacant seat. Interestingly, the council members whose current terms go until 2024 remain at-large council members until 2024. So while there may not be a council member in that seat, they continue to be represented by the at-large 2024 members. So should any of the 2024 council members resign between now and 2024, it would actually be an at-large vacancy, even if it's in 2023. So yes, there would not be a council member in that seat, but they would be represented by those at-large council members.
That is extremely helpful, and so I want to thank you for explaining that, because I was not sure how that would work, but I think that having that clarification that the council members would remain at large who were elected in 2020 makes sense. And with that, then I would support also adding to that motion that we go with alternative election sequence for map 604B.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a substitute motion made by Councilmember Cummings. And a second by Councilmember Brown. And for map 604B with the alternative election sequence. And so we'll do a roll call vote on the substitute motion.
Thank you, Mayor. So this is a vote to accept the motion. Councilmember Kalantari-Johnson,
No, and I can share why later.
Holder,
No.
Cummings?
Aye.
Brown?
Aye.
Myers?
No?
Vice Mayor Watkins?
No.
And Mayor Bruner?
No. So the substitute motion does not pass with 5-2, 5 against, 2 for. So now we are back to the original motion on the floor and back to discussion. Councilmember Brown?
Well, I was going to make the case for the previous motion with the alternative map 604B. It seems a little superfluous at this point. I do have some comments in general on the process, but I guess I'll just save those for the next agenda item because they're relevant there as well.
Okay. Did you have another comment, Councilmember Cummings?
Yeah, I'll just say that, having lived in the Beach Flats area for multiple years and in the Beach Hill area, that breaking up that area from the lower ocean corridor and also including it with some more wealthy and affluent areas that are very dissimilar to that neighborhood, especially if the idea is that we want to have more Latino representation, is likely going to result in there being less Latino representation. And I would say that if we are very interested in having more representation on the city council, then I think that the city, that our community needs to have a discussion around council compensation, especially as it relates to the mayor. If we want to have someone sit in a seat for 4 years, and we want to see increased diversity on our council and in that position of mayor. Because as it stands right now, part of what prohibits people from running is the fact that there's a lot of hours that you put in, and it's very difficult for low income and working class people to run for office and to serve. And so I won't be supporting this because I don't think that it's actually going to result in supporting more Latino people to get elected. And I also think that we're further diluting the votes of working class and lower class people, and which will result in less diversity on our city council.
Councilmember Brown, it looks like you.
Yeah, sorry. I for a second I lost track and forgot that we were just voting on whether to accept the substitute. So since we are still on the substantive matter of the different maps, I just want to echo Councilmember Cummings' comments and really highlight this question about low income representation and kind of working class people in our city and how it is that they can participate in the political process and serving in elected office. It's almost impossible to do. I mean, I've been trying to do it. I've done it. I've been very lucky to be able to do it as a renter who was displaced, and and now just have the good fortune to have a network here that's allowed me to have stable housing. So that's just a big question for me, and to then further kind of what I see draw boundaries that, as Councilmember Cummings suggested, really in attempting to put other people's ideas of communities of interest together are really giving, are not taking that same perspective when it comes to the beach flats, lower ocean. I mean, we now see, the beach flats with, the Upper West Side, the inner, the near Upper West Side is not, I just don't know how to rationalize or wrap my mind around that as a district when we have the opportunity to have a district that actually has the potential to have a representative that represents that the downtown beach area, lower ocean. They have their own, kind of small commercial network in that area in the river flats, and that's getting cut right as a district. I don't know that it really matters, but it's a point that Councilmember Myers brought up for thinking about the other maps, and so I guess we can split hairs about the how to divide the city up, and there's always going to be upsides and downsides and different perspectives. But I feel strongly that in choosing 602, which I have to say I've heard one commenter say they support. So the West Siders were calling in and saying they wanted to keep the lower West Side intact. People on the East Side saying they wanted to keep Seabright intact. Some of us spoke up about the potential for, or higher potential for a Latino candidate, a Latinx candidate to be elected in a district that was shaped more like this District 4 in map 604B. So I am disappointed as well, and won't be supporting that option. And I hope the voters spend some time with that map before they make their decision in June.
Councilmember Kalantari-Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I just wanted to comment briefly on where my thinking was. I think 604B attempts at some of the comments that were made at the last public hearing, but some of my concerns are that it does split up the east side, in particular around the business corridors. So it splits it right in half. It further separates the university from neighborhoods, and that's already a challenge where we have the city on the hill kind of up there siloed. So I think it further separates the university, and it decreases the number of coastal districts. And I think it's important that we have multiple districts that touch the coast. There were comments and in the surveys that were done, just at Councilmember Brown's point that was brought up, there were, I think 602 had some of the highest percentages of approved maps in the last survey that we did. And I just want to point to one of the earlier slides that Doug showed us around the principles of how we need to make these decisions, and that sort of doing around one race or ethnicity is something that's illegal. So I think that's an important point for us to keep in mind. So those are some of my thoughts and reasons around why I think ultimately 602 has a more balanced approach of thinking about all the services and needs across our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Golder or Vice Mayor Watkins, did you have any further discussion before we go to a vote on this motion?
I think all of my thoughts are great.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead. I don't have anything else to add.
Well, I mean, I just wanted to, speak. I don't need to. I don't have a gas bag. No, I don't have anything to say.
Okay, we have a motion for map 602 by Kalantari-Johnson, seconded by Councilmember Myers. May we have a roll call vote?
Councilmember Kalantari-Johnson,
Aye.
Golder,
Aye.
Cummings,
No.
Brown,
No.
Myers,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Watkins,
Aye.
Mayor Bruder.
Aye. That motion passes with 5 in favor and 2 against. Okay, so that is the map that we have selected. Thank you for all the input and community input on that map 602 with the election sequence listed on that map.